Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Trevor and Shelby marked their third wedding anniversary on an ordinary Thursday in September. They lived in a two-bedroom apartment downtown, the kind of place that seemed perfect for a young couple building a life together. Trevor worked as a financial analyst, had a stable routine, and appreciated the predictability that came with being in a relationship. Shelby was a graphic designer, creative, outgoing, but always balanced. Of course, they had their differences, but they worked well as a team. Until Brianna entered the picture. Or rather, until Brianna's marriage ended. Brianna had been Shelby's friend since college. They'd met during a design project and stayed in touch over the years, meeting occasionally for lunches and coffee. Brianna's divorce was quick and bitter. Her husband had cheated, and she found out in the worst possible way, through messages he'd left open on his computer. Shelby was devastated for her friend. She spent days talking to her on the phone, offering support, listening to endless rants about betrayal and disillusionment. Trevor completely understood the situation. He even encouraged Shelby to be there for Brianna. After all, that's what friends do during tough times. The problem started when that support turned into something entirely different. Brianna decided the best way to get over her divorce was to rediscover herself. That meant going out to clubs, meeting new people, and embracing the freedom she felt she'd lost during her marriage. And Shelby, in a gesture of solidarity, decided to join her on this journey. The first time Shelby said she was going out with Brianna, Trevor thought it was fine. It was a Friday, and she deserved to have some fun with her friend. He stayed home, watched a few episodes of a show he'd been following, and waited for her to come back. Shelby got home around 2 in the morning. Trevor woke up to the sound of the door opening and asked how it went. She was excited, telling him they'd gone to a new club downtown, the music had been great, and Brianna seemed to be doing better. So far, so good. But the second outing happened the following Tuesday. Then again on Thursday. And then again on Saturday. In less than 3 weeks, what was supposed to be occasional support had become a fixed routine. Shelby was going out with Brianna at least 4 times a week, always coming home late, always with the same excuse: "She needs me right now, Trevor." You get it, right? Trevor tried to understand. He really did. But something started bothering him when he saw her social media posts. Shelby had always been active on Instagram, but the photos she began posting were different, dancing way too close to unfamiliar men, drinks in hand, wide smiles. And one caption read, "Living my best life." Trevor felt a tightness in his chest when he saw a particular video. Shelby was on a dance floor, grinding against a man he'd never seen before. The man's hands were on her waist. The music was loud. The lights flashed. And Brianna was filming it all, laughing, clearly thinking it was the coolest thing ever. He waited for her to get home that night. It was 3:30 a.m. when Shelby finally opened the door. Trevor was awake, sitting on the couch, phone in hand. She stumbled in, smelling of alcohol and mixed perfume. "We need to talk," Trevor said. Shelby stopped, took off her shoes, and looked at him with an expression he knew well. It was that look that said she already knew what was coming and was already preparing her defense. "About what?" she asked, feigning innocence. "About how you've been acting. About these constant outings. About the posts you're putting up." Shelby sighed, tossed her bag onto the couch, and crossed her arms. "Trevor, seriously? Are you really starting this now? Shelby, you're dancing with other men, in a way that makes me uncomfortable. And everyone's seeing it on your social media." She rolled her eyes. "Uncomfortable? Trevor, I'm just dancing. It's just fun. You're being insecure." The word insecure hurt more than Trevor expected. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm being honest about how I feel. If you were dancing like that with me, it'd be one thing. But they're strangers, Shelby. Oh my God, Trevor. Do you hear yourself? You're trying to control me. I'm asking for respect. I'm asking you to consider how this makes me feel. Shelby let out a sarcastic laugh. You know what your problem is, Trevor? Toxic masculinity. That's exactly what you're showing right now. You want to trap me, control me, dictate what I can or can't do. It's pathetic. Trevor was silent for a few seconds, processing what he'd just heard. Toxic masculinity. She'd really thrown that term at him like a weapon to shut down any discussion. So that's it? Any concern I express is toxic masculinity? If the shoe fits, Shelby replied, grabbing her bag and heading to the bedroom. That conversation was the first of many. And they all ended the same way, with Shelby dismissing Trevor's feelings and playing the victim. He tried different approaches. He tried being gentle, direct, understanding. But the result was always the same. Shelby kept going out, kept posting, and kept saying Trevor was the problem. It was on a Thursday night, after yet another frustrating argument, that Trevor made a decision. If Shelby thought dancing intimately with strangers was completely normal and acceptable in a relationship, then he needed to test that logic. He needed to show her, in practical terms, how absurd it sounded. Trevor grabbed his phone and downloaded a dating app. He created a simple profile, uploaded a few recent photos, and filled in the basic info. He made it clear in his profile that he was married but exploring options. The idea was to provoke a reaction, to make Shelby understand that if her behavior was acceptable, then so was his. In less than 2 hours, Trevor had already received dozens of messages. Women interested, curious, some even flirting openly. He replied to a few, keeping things light and non-committal. But one message in particular caught his attention. It was from Jasmine. The same Jasmine who was close friends with Shelby. The same Jasmine who'd been at some of those club outings. The same Jasmine who always commented on Shelby's posts with fire emojis and words of encouragement. Her message read, "Hey, Trevor. What a surprise to see you here. Everything okay with you?" Trevor stared at that message for a long time. Jasmine knew he was married to Shelby. They were friends. And yet, there she was, on the app, messaging him. It was so hypocritical it was almost comical. He replied, "Hey, Jasmine. All good. Just trying out this whole, meeting new people, thing, you know? Oh, I get it. Things with Shelby? You could say that. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Trevor left the conversation there. He knew it would eventually reach Shelby's ears. And he was right. 2 days later, on a Saturday afternoon, Shelby stormed into the apartment like a hurricane. She'd just had lunch with Jasmine and a few other friends, and apparently, news of Trevor's profile was already circulating. She threw her bag on the kitchen table and marched straight to the bedroom, where Trevor was working on his laptop. "You're on a dating app," she yelled, holding her phone like it was criminal evidence. Trevor closed his laptop and looked at her calmly. "I am. How dare you? How dare you do this to me?" "Do what, exactly? Meet new people? Interact with other women? I thought that was normal. You yourself said I was being insecure for being bothered by your dancing." Shelby opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "This is completely different." "How?" "Explain it to me, Shelby. Because from my perspective, you're being a hypocrite. I was dancing. You're literally cheating." Trevor stood up. "Cheating? You danced pressed up against other men, let them put their hands on you, and then posted it all over social media for everyone to see. And when I told you it bothered me, you called me insecure and controlling. But now that I'm doing something equivalent, suddenly it's cheating. Equivalent? Equivalent? Trevor, you're talking to other women on a dating app. And you were letting other men put their hands on your body while dancing. How is that different? Shelby was shaking with anger. You're a miserable bastard. And you're a hypocrite. But you know what's funny? Jasmine is on the app too. And she messaged me. Your friend, Shelby. The one who was there with you at all those clubs. Shelby's face turned red. She was speechless, and Trevor knew he'd hit a crucial point. He continued. If you think what I'm doing is cheating, then you need to admit that what you were doing was too. You're applying double standards. Shelby took a step back, eyes welling up. I hate you. You hate that I'm showing you the truth. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door. Trevor heard her call someone, probably Brianna, and start venting loudly. He could make out fragments of the conversation. He's on an app, yeah, a dating app. I know, he's trash. But Trevor was strangely calm. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he was in control of the situation. He'd turned the tables using the same twisted logic Shelby had been applying. And now she was facing the cognitive dissonance it created. What Trevor hoped for was that this would lead to a real conversation, one where they could finally lay everything on the table and sort things out like adults. But the opposite happened. 3 days later, Shelby created her own profile on a dating app. She posted provocative photos, added a bio that read, "In an open relationship. Living with no regrets," and started openly interacting with other men. Worse still, she began showing it to Trevor, as if it were some kind of revenge. Look at this, she said during a tense dinner, showing him her phone screen. 50 matches in 2 hours. Seems I'm way more popular than you. Trevor looked at the screen, then at her. Do you really think this is going to fix anything? It fixes it for me. If you can do it, so can I. Shelby, when I did this, it was to show you how absurd your logic was. You're doing this because, why? Revenge? I'm doing it because I can. Because I'm free. And if you have a problem with that, then you're the insecure one here. Things spiraled completely out of control when Shelby decided to make it all public. She posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "In an open relationship and have never felt freer." The post showed her smiling, phone in hand, displaying the dating app. Shelby's friends flooded the comments. Olivia wrote, "You're amazing. Living your truth." Sierra added, "Traditional relationships are outdated anyway. You're absolutely right." And Brianna, of course, commented, "That's the spirit. You deserve it all." But there were also comments from people who knew the couple and were confused. Trevor's cousin asked, "Wait, you're in an open relationship? Since when?" A coworker of Shelby's commented, Is this serious?" Trevor got messages from friends and family asking what was going on. He had to explain, repeatedly, that it was a complicated situation and that he and Shelby were having problems. Some offered support. Others judged. And some simply disappeared, uncomfortable with all the drama. The apartment became a silent battlefield. Trevor and Shelby barely spoke. When they crossed paths in the kitchen or living room, there were only cold stares and cutting remarks. She spent even more time away from home, now openly saying she was seeing other people. Trevor buried himself in work, staying extra hours at the office just to avoid being at home. Shelby's friends started visiting the apartment more often. Olivia and Sierra began sleeping over a few nights, treating the place like a girls' dorm. They made passive-aggressive comments about Trevor, always loud enough for him to hear. "Men are all the same," Olivia said once while Trevor was getting water in the kitchen. "They want freedom for themselves but try to control women." Trevor simply ignored it. He knew responding would only make things worse. But inside, he was exhausted, tired of the drama, tired of the hypocrisy, tired of living in a toxic environment where he was constantly painted as the villain. Then, on a Tuesday night, while Trevor was lying on the couch because Shelby had locked the bedroom door, he realized something fundamental: that relationship was over. They were just living among the wreckage, dragging out the inevitable. And the longer they waited, the more painful and complicated it would become. Trevor was at work when he got the message from Chase. He knew Chase from the building, a neighbor who lived 3 floors down. They'd exchanged greetings in the elevator, chatted briefly about the local football team, but had never developed a close friendship. So when the notification popped up on his phone with Chase's name, Trevor was surprised. The message read, "Dude, sorry I have to show you this, but I thought you should know." Below the message was an attached video. Trevor opened the file, and what he saw made his stomach turn. It was Shelby, at a bar he recognized as being 2 blocks from their apartment. She was sitting on a high stool, talking to a man with dark hair and a blue dress shirt. They were laughing, she was touching his arm intimately, and then, after a few seconds, they kissed, a long, deliberate kiss with no hesitation. Trevor watched the video 3 times. Each time hoping to see something different, some angle that would prove it was a misunderstanding. But it was undeniable. Shelby was kissing another man in a public bar, and Chase had filmed the whole thing. He replied to Chase, "Thanks for letting me know." Chase sent another message, "If you need anything, just say the word. I know things must be rough right now." Trevor thanked him again and put his phone away. He sat at his desk for a few minutes, staring at his computer screen without really seeing anything. The anger he expected to feel took a while to come. Instead, there was something colder, more calculated, an absolute clarity about what needed to be done. He opened a new browser tab and started researching rental laws in the state. The apartment was only in his name. The lease had only Trevor's signature. Shelby had never been officially added, a step he'd planned to take but never got around to because of pure procrastination. Now, that procrastination had become an advantage. According to the law, he had the right to ask anyone living in the apartment but not on the lease to leave, as long as he provided a formal 30-day notice. Trevor saved all the relevant information and, at the end of his workday, stopped by a law office on his way home. The lawyer who met with him, a middle-aged man named Richard, listened carefully to the situation. Trevor showed him the lease, explained that Shelby had been living with him but that the relationship had ended, and that he wanted to formally request her departure from the apartment. "It's pretty straightforward," Richard said. "You have the legal right to ask her to leave. I'll prepare the document for you. Just understand that she might contest it, might try to argue she has occupancy rights, but given that the lease is only in your name and you were married but are now separating, the law is on your side. How long will it take? I can have the document ready by tomorrow morning. You'll need to deliver it in person or through a process server. I recommend the process server for official documentation." Trevor agreed to everything. He paid the initial fee and left the office with a strange sense of determination. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he was taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. When he got home that night, Shelby was in the living room with Brianna. They were watching some reality show and laughing loudly. Trevor walked right past them, went into the bedroom Shelby had finally unlocked, grabbed some clothes, and returned to the living room. "I'll sleep in the guest room," he said, more to himself than to them. Shelby barely glanced in his direction. "Whatever." Brianna let out a laugh and muttered something Trevor chose to ignore. The next day, Richard called to say the document was ready. Trevor left work early, picked up the legal notice, and hired a process server to make the formal delivery. He wanted everything done properly, with no loopholes Shelby could exploit later. The delivery happened on a Friday night. Trevor was home when the process server knocked on the door. Shelby answered, confused by the uniformed man's presence. "Shelby Morrison?" the server asked. "Yes, that's me. I have a legal notice for you." He handed her the sealed envelope. Shelby took it, looked at Trevor standing in the hallway, and opened the document right there. Trevor saw the exact moment she understood what she was reading. Her face shifted from confusion to shock, then to pure fury. "You're evicting me? You're evicting me? I'm formally requesting that you vacate the apartment in 30 days. The lease is only in my name, and you're entitled to that period to find another place. You're a miserable bastard. How could you do this?" The process server, used to this kind of reaction, said, "Ma'am, the notice has been served. You have 30 days from today. If you have any questions about the process, I recommend consulting a lawyer." He left, and Shelby stood there, holding the paper with trembling hands. "You really think you're going to get away with this?" "I already have. The document is legal. You have 30 days. I live here. And you'll keep living here for another 30 days. After that, you'll need to find somewhere else." Shelby grabbed her phone and immediately called Brianna. Trevor heard her explain the situation at the top of her lungs, heard Brianna equally outraged on the other end, and decided he'd heard enough. He went to the guest room and locked the door. The following days were an emotional roller coaster. Shelby alternated between different strategies. Sometimes, she tried being nice. She'd cook his favorite dinner, leave sweet notes around the house, even attempt to start conversations about fixing things. Trevor saw right through all of it. He'd seen the video. He knew it was manipulation, a last desperate attempt to avoid consequences. Other times, she was hostile. She'd deliberately break dishes, throw his clothes on the floor, scream in the middle of the night just to wake him up. But Trevor stayed firm. He documented every incident, took photos of any damage she caused, and kept everything recorded. The situation escalated when Shelby decided to throw a party in the apartment. It was a Thursday, and Trevor had just gotten home from work when he found the living room full of people he'd never seen before. Loud music, drinks everywhere, people smoking on the balcony. Shelby was right in the middle of it all, laughing, clearly drunk. Trevor recognized a few faces. Marcus, a guy he'd seen in Shelby's social media photos. Gavin, another who frequently commented on her posts. Brianna, of course, was there too, along with Olivia and Sierra. "What's going on here?" Trevor asked, having to shout over the music. Shelby turned to him with a malicious smile. "I'm enjoying my home while I still can. Got a problem with that?" "Shelby, it's a work night tomorrow. Turn that music off." "Or what? You're gonna evict me?" "Oh wait, you already are." People laughed. Marcus yelled, "Relax, man. It's just a party." Trevor looked around and realized arguing would be pointless. He grabbed his phone and recorded some video of the mess, documented the empty bottles, overflowing ashtrays, stains on the couch. Then he went to the guest room and called the building's landlord, explaining the situation and making it clear the party had been Shelby's idea, without his consent. The party lasted until 3 a.m. When it finally ended, the apartment was trashed. Broken glasses, food stomped into the carpet, a burn mark on the coffee table where someone had left a lit cigarette. Trevor took photos of everything. The next morning, he emailed Shelby with all the evidence attached. "You'll be held responsible for all damages to the apartment. I'll deduct repair costs from anything you've left behind." Shelby replied with a flood of profanities and empty threats. Shelby's mother showed up a week later. Carol was a woman in her 50s, always well put together, always with a strong opinion about everything. Trevor had met her a few times during the marriage and they'd never gotten along. She thought Trevor was too cold and that Shelby deserved someone more spontaneous. Carol knocked on the apartment door on a Saturday morning. Trevor answered, and she walked right in without being invited. "Trevor, we need to talk about this ridiculous situation." "Hi, Carol. There's nothing to discuss. The decision's been made. You're kicking my daughter out of her home. How do you expect me to stay quiet about this?" Carol, this apartment is in my name. The lease is mine. Shelby has 30 days to find another place, and I'm honoring that period. She's devastated. She can barely sleep. She was devastated enough to throw a party here and cause thousands of dollars in damage. She was devastated enough to kiss another man in a bar. So excuse me if I question how much she's really suffering. Carol turned red. How dare you talk about my daughter like that? I'm stating the truth. And if you came here to convince me to change my mind, you're wasting your time. You'll regret this, Trevor. My daughter will move on and find someone who truly values her, and you'll be left alone realizing you lost the best thing you ever had. Trevor took a deep breath. If that's the best thing I've ever had, then I'm looking forward to what comes next. Carol slammed the door on her way out. Shelby, who'd been in the bedroom the whole time, came out and looked at Trevor with pure hatred. You humiliated my mother. Your mother came here to attack me. I just made things clear. You're the worst person I've ever known. And yet, you chose to marry me. Meanwhile, at work, Trevor began noticing that the situation was affecting his professional reputation. Natalie, a colleague from the marketing department who happened to be friends with Olivia, started spreading rumors around the office. Trevor overheard snippets of conversations in the break room, noticed strange looks in the hallway, and finally a close friend, Daniel, came to him and told him what was happening. Dude, Natalie's saying you emotionally abused your wife. That you controlled her, isolated her from friends, and are now using the apartment as a way to manipulate her. Trevor felt his blood boil. She's saying what? I know it's a lie, but she's spreading it to everyone. Some people are actually believing it. That's defamation. She could be sued for that. I know, but you know how things work here. Once a rumor starts, it's hard to stop. Trevor scheduled a meeting with Human Resources. He briefly explained his personal situation, made it clear he was going through a separation, and informed them that an employee was spreading false information about him. The HR manager, a woman named Patricia, listened carefully and promised to investigate. 2 days later, Natalie was called in for a formal talk. Trevor later learned from Daniel that she'd received an official warning for spreading unfounded rumors in the workplace. The warning would stay on her record, and any repeat offense would result in termination. The damage, however, was already done. Trevor knew some people in the office still believed the lies, and that his reputation had taken a hit. But he chose to focus on what he could control, ending this separation as cleanly as possible and moving forward. The 30 days somehow felt both fast and painfully slow. Shelby made sure every day was difficult. She'd bring strangers into the apartment at all hours, make noise on purpose, leave the kitchen a mess, and once even threw out some of Trevor's things from the fridge. But Trevor stayed firm. He counted the days on the calendar, documented every incident, and reminded himself this was temporary, that soon, he'd have his space back, his peace back, his life back. Marcus and Gavin became frequent visitors in the final weeks. They helped Shelby pack her things, always making passive-aggressive comments about Trevor. A real man helps a woman grow, man, Marcus said once while passing Trevor in the kitchen. Trevor simply ignored him. On the 29th day, Shelby was still packing. Trevor started worrying she'd try to drag things out, but on the final morning, a moving truck pulled up in front of the building. Shelby, Brianna, Marcus, and Gavin loaded her boxes and furniture. The process took most of the day. When they finished, Shelby stood in the doorway, looking at Trevor one last time. Tears filled her eyes, but Trevor had seen that trick before. She waited for him to say something, to offer one last chance, but he remained silent. You'll regret this, she finally said. I've regretted a lot of things, Shelby. But letting you go will never be one of them. She walked out and closed the door. Trevor heard her footsteps fading down the hallway, the elevator opening and closing, and then, silence. He stood there, in the middle of the empty apartment, and for the first time in months, took a deep breath without feeling a weight on his chest. The divorce was surprisingly smooth. With the physical separation already settled and both wanting to close that chapter, the lawyers moved quickly. They divided their assets fairly, resolved outstanding financial matters, and 6 months after Shelby moved out, the divorce was officially finalized. Trevor received the signed papers on a Tuesday afternoon. He filed them away with all the other documents from that period and put everything in a box in the closet. It was the official closing of a cycle that had been painful, confusing, and exhausting. But with that closure came something unexpected, a deep sense of relief. Trevor realized he'd spent months living in constant tension, always bracing for the next explosion, the next drama, the next accusation. Now, with Shelby out of his life, he could finally relax. He could be himself without constantly being judged or attacked. He started rebuilding his life. He redecorated the apartment, replaced furniture that reminded him of Shelby, even painted the walls a different color. He returned to things he'd enjoyed but set aside during the marriage: reading, morning runs, watching movies she'd hated. A few months after the divorce, Trevor ran into Shelby by chance at a cafe. She was with a guy he recognized from her social media photos, probably one of the many she'd met during that chaotic period. They locked eyes for a moment, and Trevor gave a polite nod. Shelby got up and came over to his table. "Hi," she said, her voice softer than he remembered. "Hi, Shelby. How are you?" "I'm good. And you?" "I'm good too." An awkward silence followed. Then Shelby said, "Look, I know things ended badly between us. And I wanted to say that. I get it now. Some of the things you said made sense. I was just too lost back then to see it." Trevor nodded. "I appreciate you saying that. Are you happy?" "I am. Happier than I've been in a long time." She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I'm glad for you." She went back to her table, and Trevor finished his coffee. When he left the cafe, he realized that encounter had been necessary. Seeing Shelby again, having that brief but honest conversation, had been the final confirmation that he'd made the right choice. Some time later, Trevor ran into Carol, Shelby's mother, at a grocery store. He was paying for his groceries when he heard someone call his name. Carol was there, pushing a cart, looking at him with what he recognized as embarrassment. "Trevor," she said, approaching. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, Carol." She took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize for how I acted when you and Shelby were separating. I was protecting my daughter, but I said things that weren't fair." Trevor was surprised. "I appreciate that, Carol. Shelby told me more about what really happened. About the things she did. And I realize now you were just trying to protect yourself. We both made mistakes. But I've learned a lot from all of it." Carol smiled. "You look good. Lighter." "I am. Take care, Trevor." "You too, Carol." That brief conversation brought another kind of closure. Trevor realized that the people around the situation had gone through their own journeys of understanding. And that, in the end, the truth always finds a way to surface. Trevor learned deep lessons from that experience. He learned that setting boundaries in a relationship is essential, and that accepting less than you deserve is a form of self-betrayal. He learned that emotional manipulation can come in many disguises, and that recognizing the patterns is the first step toward breaking free. Most importantly, he learned that respecting yourself is fundamental. For too long, he'd let Shelby dictate the terms of their relationship, invalidate his feelings, and make him question his own sanity. But when he finally took a stand, when he decided his mental peace mattered more than keeping up appearances, everything changed. Trevor understood that loving someone should never mean losing yourself. That healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, honest communication, and clear boundaries. And that when someone consistently disrespects those boundaries, the only healthy choice is to walk away. He looked at his life now and saw possibilities instead of obligations. He saw freedom instead of confinement. He saw hope instead of despair. And he knew, with every fiber of his being, that he'd made the right choice, that he'd chosen himself when he needed to most. And that choice, as difficult as it had been, had saved his life. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.